She was falling. 6 crystal glasses of champagne suspended in the air around her like frozen rain. And in that terrifying half-second, Clara Bennett knew her life was about to shatter against the marble floor of Manhattan's most exclusive ballroom. Then strong hands caught her waist, and everything she believed about love, fate, and her own worth changed forever. But what happened next? That's where this story gets interesting. If you love stories about ordinary women who find extraordinary love, hit that subscribe button right now, because trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming. Stay with me until the very end, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I can't wait to see how far Clara's story travels. Now, let me take you back to where this incredible journey began. 2 days earlier, Clara stood in the cramped break room of the Riverside Cafe, her hands trembling so violently she could barely hold the golden invitation. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across her tired face. The embossed letters seemed to mock her with their elegance. Private birthday celebration, Victoria Hartwell, the Plaza Hotel, black tie. $5,000, she whispered to her best friend Maya, who sat across from her with arms folded tightly and suspicion carved into every line of her face. They're paying $5,000 for one night of serving champagne. That's more than I make in 2 months. Maya leaned forward, her dark eyes narrowing. And that doesn't scream trap to you. Nobody pays that kind of money for an unknown waitress. What if this is some sick game billionaires play? Humiliate the help for entertainment? I've heard stories, Clara. Rich people get bored. They do cruel things for fun. Clara's throat tightened. She'd thought about it. For 48 hours, her mind had raced between desperate hope and paralyzing fear. She'd Googled Victoria Hartwell until her eyes burned. She'd read every article, every gossip column, every warning sign she could find. But that morning, she'd called her grandmother, and everything else had faded to white noise. June's voice had cracked when she tried to hide the pain shooting through her infected tooth. Clara had heard the sharp intake of breath her grandmother couldn't quite suppress. She'd heard the woman who raised her, the woman who had worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over their heads, pretending she was fine while eating toast with ketchup because she couldn't afford real food. She'd heard the fear beneath the reassurance, the silent suffering June thought she was hiding. Grandma needs that dental surgery, Maya. The infection is spreading to her jaw. The doctor said if we wait any longer. Clara's voice broke like thin ice under pressure. I have to try, even if there's only the smallest chance this is real. Maya reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Then I'll be waiting by my phone all night. The second something feels wrong, you get out. I don't care if you have to climb through a bathroom window. Clara nodded, blinking back tears. She'd walked through fire for the woman who'd raised an orphan little girl with nothing but love. The night of the event arrived like a fever dream wrapped in silk. Clara stood in the staff locker room at the Plaza Hotel, barely recognizing the woman staring back from the mirror. The crisp black and white uniform transformed her ordinary appearance into something almost elegant. She pulled her unruly brown hair into a tight bun, applied a touch of gloss to her trembling lips, and pressed her palms against her racing heart. "You can do this," she whispered. "Smile, serve, be invisible, go home $5,000 richer." The ballroom stole her breath. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls of diamonds, each one probably worth more than everything Clara had ever owned combined. White orchids and roses covered every surface, their perfume so intoxicating, Clara felt dizzy. The air itself seemed to shimmer with wealth, with power, with the kind of casual elegance that came from generations of never worrying about money. Women glided past in gowns that whispered against marble floors, each dress a work of art worth more than Clara's year's rent. Their jewelry caught the light and threw it back in dazzling rainbows. Men in custom tuxedos conversed in small clusters, their laughter confident and easy, holding champagne glasses that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. Everyone belonged here except her. Clara felt like an imposter wearing a costume, playing a role she had no business auditioning for. Marcus, the event supervisor, gathered the waitstaff in a tight circle, his face pale and pinched with stress. His voice dropped to an urgent whisper that demanded everyone lean closer. The birthday girl is Victoria Hartwell, Manhattan's Ice Queen, the woman who once had a caterer blacklisted from the entire eastern seaboard for serving lukewarm soup. She doesn't tolerate mistakes. You spill a drop, you trip, you breathe too loudly. You're fired and blacklisted. Your career in hospitality will be over before it began. Understood? Clara swallowed hard. And most importantly, Marcus continued, dropping his voice to a harsh whisper, her fiancé, Ethan Wexler, will be present. Yes, that Ethan Wexler, real estate billionaire, Fortune 500's most eligible bachelor. Keep your distance. Don't make eye contact. And for God's sake, don't spill anything on him. Clara knew the name. Ethan Wexler was plastered across magazine covers monthly, his steel gray eyes and sharp jawline selling everything from business deals to cologne. He existed in a universe so far removed from hers they might as well have been different species. He was the sun. She was a speck of dust floating in its distant orbit. She picked up her tray of champagne and stepped into the crowd, completely unaware that in less than 2 hours she would be accused of theft, face down the most dangerous woman in the room, and meet the man who would rewrite her entire life. Destiny didn't ask permission before turning everything upside down. The collision happened at exactly 9:47 p.m. Clara was weaving through the crowd, her tray balanced with 6 crystal flutes of Dom Perignon, when a tall figure stepped backward into her path. She pivoted hard, but her heel caught the edge of an ornate rug. Time froze. She felt herself falling, watched the champagne glasses beginning their descent toward the pristine marble floor. In that suspended moment, she saw everything crumbling. The hospital bills, her grandmother's pain, everything she'd risked, lost in a single instant. Then warm hands caught her waist, steadied her. The glasses remained perfectly balanced. Steady there. The voice was deep, warm, threaded with quiet amusement. Clara looked up and found herself drowning in the most striking pair of gray eyes she'd ever seen. Storm clouds shot through with silver lightning. The man was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair that fell carelessly across his forehead. His tuxedo fit like a second skin, and with dawning horror, Clara realized it probably cost more than her rusted Honda Civic. "Mr. Wexler," she breathed, "I'm so sorry." "You didn't spill a drop." His lips curved into a smile that transformed his serious face into something dangerously beautiful. "That's impressive. Most people would have panicked." He was still holding her. His hands were warm through her uniform, and every eye within 30 feet had turned toward them. She stepped back quickly, heat flooding her cheeks. I need to." She couldn't form a sentence. "Breathe," Ethan suggested, that infuriating smile still playing on his lips. Oxygen is generally considered essential. Before Clara could respond, a voice cut through the air like a blade. "Ethan, darling, there you are." Victoria Hartwell materialized beside them, and Clara immediately understood why they called her the Ice Queen. She was stunning in the way magazine covers were stunning, perfect, polished, and somehow not quite human. Her platinum blonde hair swept into an intricate updo, her pale blue gown probably cost more than Clara's annual salary, and her smile didn't reach her Arctic eyes. "I've been looking everywhere for you," Victoria continued, linking her arm possessively through Ethan's. Her gaze swept over Clara like she was examining an insect. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem," Ethan said smoothly. "I nearly caused an accident. This waitress has remarkable reflexes." "How fortunate." Victoria's smile sharpened to a razor's edge. "You're the new girl, aren't you? The one they brought in specially?" "Yes, ma'am." Clara kept her voice steady despite every alarm screaming danger. "Interesting." Victoria's manicured nail tapped against her glass like a countdown. "Do be careful tonight. The Hartwells have very high standards. We'd hate for anything to go wrong." That emphasis sent ice through Clara's veins. This wasn't a warning. It was a threat wrapped in silk and diamonds. "Of course, if you'll excuse me." Clara turned to flee. "Wait." Ethan's voice stopped her. "I didn't catch your name." Every instinct screamed to keep walking, but something in his tone made her turn back. "Clara, Clara Bennett. Clara. He repeated it slowly, savoring the sound. Thank you for not destroying my shoes with expensive champagne. Despite everything, she felt a smile tugging at her lips. You're welcome, Mr. Wexler. Ethan, he corrected. Mr. Wexler is my father, and he's significantly less charming. Ethan. Victoria's voice acquired a razor's edge. We have guests waiting. As Victoria steered him away, Ethan glanced back, his gray eyes finding Clara's with an intensity that made her heart stutter. That look, she would later realize, was the moment everything began to unravel. The next 90 minutes passed in a blur. Clara kept her head down, her smile fixed. She was invisible, exactly as she needed to be, until she wasn't. She'd stepped into a quiet alcove to catch her breath when raised voices drew her attention. Through a partially open door, she glimpsed Victoria with her father, Harrison Hartwell, whose investment firm controlled half of Manhattan. The merger depends on this marriage, Harrison hissed, veins bulging in his neck. The Wexler contract is worth $3 billion. All you have to do is keep that man happy until the ink dries. And after? What happens to me? After, you'll have more money than God. But right now, you smile and make certain nothing jeopardizes this deal. Clara pressed against the wall, barely breathing. The engagement wasn't about love. Victoria was being sold like property. For one strange moment, Clara felt a flicker of sympathy. What kind of life was that? Before she could process this, a hand clamped on her shoulder. There she is! A security guard's voice boomed. That's the one! Clara spun around, blood turning to ice. What's happening? Marcus appeared, face twisted with fury. We found missing jewelry in your locker. A diamond bracelet worth $80,000. Did you think you'd get away with it? I didn't. I haven't. Clara's voice shattered. I've never stolen anything in my life. No one listened. Hands grabbed her arms. Voices shouted about police. Through the chaos, Clara caught Victoria's cold smile across the room. Pure satisfaction. She'd been set up. Stop! The single word cut through the noise like a thunderclap. Everyone froze. Ethan Wexler strode through the crowd, expression dark as a coming storm. What exactly is happening here? Mr. Wexler, this waitress was caught stealing. We found a diamond bracelet. Show me. The crowd parted as Ethan examined the bracelet. Then he turned to Clara, his gray eyes searching her face. Did you take this? No. Her voice was barely a whisper, but steady. I've never seen it before. Someone put it there. I swear on my grandmother's life. She's lying. Victoria swept forward, performance Oscar-worthy. I saw her admiring my bracelet earlier. That's interesting, Ethan interrupted coldly. Considering this bracelet has been in my family's vault for 3 years. It belonged to my grandmother, so unless you've been secretly breaking into my estate, Victoria, there's no way Clara could have admired it. The color drained from Victoria's face. What's more interesting, Ethan continued, voice dropping to dangerous quiet, is how my grandmother's bracelet ended up here, when I'm the only person with vault access. Except, of course, for my fiancé. Deathly silence. Clara watched realization dawn across every face. This wasn't theft. It was an elaborate setup, and Ethan had just exposed it before Manhattan's elite. Harrison Hartwell stepped forward, purple with rage. Now see here. Mr. Hartwell, Ethan said with deadly calm. Planting evidence to frame an innocent woman is a serious crime. I have security cameras showing exactly who accessed that vault this week. Would you like me to call my lawyers first, or yours? Victoria let out a whimper. For the first time, she looked human, terrified, trapped. This party is over, Ethan offered Clara his hand. May I escort you somewhere safe, Miss Bennett? Clara stared at his outstretched hand. 20 minutes ago, she'd been a waitress trying to survive. Now, she stood at the center of a scandal that would rock Manhattan. But when she looked into Ethan's eyes, she saw something unexpected. Not pity, not calculation, just quiet certainty. And something else that made her breath catch. She took his hand. Behind them, Victoria's voice rose to a scream. Ethan, the merger, everything will fall apart. He didn't look back. Not once. In the hallway, Clara pulled her hand free. Why did you do that? You destroyed your engagement, your business deal, for a waitress you met 2 hours ago. Ethan leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. Because it was right. Because I've watched my whole life be dictated by deals and arrangements. He met her eyes with devastating honesty. Because when you looked at me, you were the first person all night who saw me. Not my money, not my name, just me. Clara felt tears burning. You don't even know me. I know you walked into the lion's den for your grandmother. I know you stayed calm when everything fell apart. I know you didn't lie, even when lying might have saved you. He closed the distance between them. I know enough. This is insane. Things like this don't happen to people like me. Maybe they should. His voice was soft as velvet. Maybe the world would be better if they did. Later, in a quiet coffee shop at 2 a.m., Clara learned everything. The arranged marriage, the loveless partnership, the golden cage Ethan had been trapped in since childhood. You saved me tonight, he said. You just don't know it yet. I was accused of theft. How is that saving anyone? Because it forced me to make a choice I've been avoiding for years. He touched her hand. I've been living someone else's life, Clara. Tonight, for the first time, I wrote my own line. Clara looked at their hands, his manicured and powerful, hers rough from years of work. We come from completely different worlds. Then maybe it's time to build a new one. She squeezed his hand back. But Clara was wrong to think the worst was behind them. So wrong. The next morning, her face was everywhere. Billionaire dumps heiress for waitress. Cinderella scam, how a nobody manipulated Manhattan's most eligible bachelor. Headlines screamed across every tabloid, every news site, every social media platform. Paparazzi camped outside her apartment building, their cameras flashing like lightning every time she approached a window. Her phone exploded with interview requests, hate messages, death threats that made her hands shake. Someone leaked her grandmother's address to a gossip site. Clara couldn't leave her apartment without being photographed. She couldn't check her phone without seeing her own face twisted into something ugly by strangers who had never met her. Comments called her a gold digger, a whore, a scheming nobody who had seduced an innocent billionaire for his money. They're calling me a gold digger, Clara whispered one night, showing Ethan the messages with trembling hands. Tears streamed down her face as she scrolled through hundreds of hateful comments. A scheming nobody who seduced you for money. They're saying I planned the whole thing, that I somehow orchestrated being framed for theft just to get your attention. Harrison Hartwell had launched his revenge with surgical precision. Anonymous sources, clearly paid by his PR team, painted Clara as a manipulative temptress who had researched Ethan for months before that party. Social media influencers with millions of followers tore her apart for sport. Old classmates she barely remembered sold fake stories to gossip sites, inventing entire conversations that never happened. A childhood photo of Clara in a cheap Halloween costume went viral with the caption, "She's been practicing her Cinderella act since childhood." We should end this, Clara said one night, voice breaking as she sat on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by piles of hate mail that had been shoved under her door. I'm destroying your reputation. Your company's stock dropped 12%. Your board members are calling for your resignation. Your own father called me a social climbing parasite on national television. She looked up at him, mascara running down her cheeks. I'm not worth all this. I'm just a waitress. I'm nobody. Ethan knelt beside her, carefully taking her face in his hands. His gray eyes burned with an intensity that took her breath away. My father doesn't know what love looks like. He's been married 3 times and never understood any of his wives. He measures people's worth by their net worth, and that's why he's alone in a mansion with nothing but his money to keep him company. His thumbs gently wiped away her tears. I'm not letting you go because small people have small opinions. But your company, your family, everything you've built. Clara. His voice was firm but gentle. I spent 32 years doing what was expected, being who everyone else needed me to be, following a script someone else wrote before I was born. You're the first person who made me want to be who I actually am. He pressed his forehead against hers. If you leave, it won't be because of them. It'll be because you chose to. Is that what you want? She thought about her grandmother, who had raised her alone despite everyone saying she was too old, too poor, too tired. June had taken in a scared little orphan when she had nothing, and she had never let other people's opinions stop her from loving that child with everything she had. June had taught Clara that love wasn't about what was convenient or easy. Love was about showing up, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. No, Clara whispered, that's not what I want. Then we fight together, and we don't stop until they see what I see when I look at you. They held a press conference in the lobby of Ethan's company headquarters. Hundreds of reporters crammed into the space, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward like weapons. Clara's heart pounded so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. She told her story, the grandmother she was trying to save, the setup at the party, the planted bracelet. She showed photos of June, of the tiny apartment they shared, of the medical bills piling up on the kitchen counter. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. And then she said something no one expected. Victoria Hartwell isn't my enemy. She's a woman who was raised to believe her only value was as a bargaining chip in her father's business deals. She was taught that love was a transaction, that her worth depended on who she married and what they were worth. I don't hate her. Clara paused, feeling the weight of every camera, every eye in the room. I hope one day she finds the freedom to choose her own life, to discover who she is when no one is telling her who to be. That single sentence changed everything. Women across America saw themselves in Clara, the daughter pressured into unwanted marriages by demanding parents, the employee who had been framed by jealous colleagues, the girlfriend who had been told she wasn't good enough, the woman who had been reduced to her appearance, her bank account, her connections. Clara's story became their story. Her courage became their courage. The tide of public opinion shifted overnight. Support flooded in from every corner. Survivors of workplace harassment shared their stories. Women who had escaped controlling families reached out with solidarity. Clara's vulnerability had become her superpower. Victoria watched the press conference alone in her penthouse apartment, a glass of wine untouched in her hand. She had expected rage. She had expected attacks. She had prepared herself for the public humiliation she deserved. She had not prepared for forgiveness. Something cracked inside her, some wall she had built so long ago she had forgotten it existed. That night, hands trembling, she called Clara. Why did you defend me? I tried to destroy you. Clara was quiet for a long moment. Because someone once told me that hurt people, and I think you've been hurt for a very long time. Victoria's voice shattered. I don't know how to be anyone except who my father made me. Then maybe it's time to find out. 3 months later, Victoria walked away from her family's company. She checked into a wellness retreat, started therapy, began the long journey of discovering who she was without her father's expectations. She sent Clara a card. Thank you for showing me there was another way. I'm learning to write my own story. V. A year later, Clara and Ethan stood in front of friends and family at the community center they'd built together in Brooklyn. Not the Plaza Hotel, not designer gowns, just 200 people who actually mattered. Clara wore a vintage dress from a Brooklyn boutique. Maya stood beside her as maid of honor, crying happy tears. And Grandma June, strong, healthy, beaming, walked her down the aisle. I do, Ethan said, voice cracking with emotion. I do, Clara echoed, meaning it with every cell in her body. 3 years later, she stood at the window of their 5th community center, watching families stream in for the grand opening. Baby Rose June gurgled in the carrier against her chest, tiny fingers wrapped around Clara's. Ethan appeared beside her, disheveled from a day of setup work, sawdust in his hair and paint on his expensive shirt. He wrapped his arms around them both. What are you thinking about? That night at the plaza, how scared I was. How impossible everything seemed. And now? Clara turned to face him, This man who had seen her when she was invisible, who had chosen her when he could have had anyone. Now I know that impossible is just another word for hasn't happened yet. She'd gone to that party expecting nothing but survival. She'd found a love that built empires, not of money, but of meaning. Some stories end with glass slippers and fairy godmothers. Theirs ended with calloused hands, community centers, and a daughter named after the strongest women they knew. Some stories end with happily ever after. Theirs was just beginning. If this story touched your heart, smash that like button and subscribe. I pour my soul into every story, and your support means everything. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had someone believe in you when no one else did? I read every single comment. Until next time, remember, your story isn't over. The best chapter might be the one you haven't written yet.